Let's go to Brother Steve Coakley as he speaks more about the boule.
So it appears as if in finding the boule that within it was a subordination to something else. And in its history book, it drew attention. Here's a logo. And this is their logo is a Grecian sphinx. It's an animal. And this Grecian sphinx is similar to a griffin or a gargoyle. Kind of ironically, the boule had their convention in Los Angeles in 1941. At where else? Griffin Park. And this logo, this symbol, is a guardian animal. This would be similar to a Rottweiler or a dog or a German Shepherd. They tend to protect something higher than itself.
All right, you notice how he said they tend to protect something higher than themselves. Very important point to make. Right? So within the secret society network, the boule are to serve, to adore, and to protect something higher than itself. So the question becomes, what does the boule protect? The answer is the ruling elite via the boule's subjugation to all higher-ranking secret societies within the ruling elite's power structure. So understand that the boule functions as a protector of the ruling elite. Let's go ahead and listen a little bit more to what Brother Steve Coakley has to offer on this topic.
Here in California, they used Proposition 13 to suck up the surplus out the budget, and bankers began to take over from municipalities the governing of the cities. And as I was scratching, I could not figure out how was there such black complicity in this centralization of worldwide power, the New World Order. It's on the dollar bill, pyramid by white men who never built one, never saw one, but they emulated this symbol. And now comes a series of societies, and now comes forth this black one in 1904. As we began to read deeper, it had another analogy in the story to Skull and Bones. It wasn't until we got the history book that the analogy that looked happenstantial in the story in the LA Times was actually deeper in the actual history book, where they drew attention to Skull and Bones. It denoted that W.E.B. Du Bois was a member, and it began to describe people, influential people in the present-day society, and historically, our university, historically black college presidents are primarily coming out of this advisors to the king.
Right, you hear that last comment there. The advisors to the king. That's what boule functions. They're the advisors to the ruling elite. Okay. Now the idea is that they advise the ruling elite as to the black population, how to keep that black population in check. However, as they advise the ruling elite, they function as the servants to, or the protectors of, the ruling elite. Very important point to make here. So the boule are the advisors to the king. The question is, who is the king? The answer is the ruling elite via the boule subjugation to all higher ranking secret societies within the ruling elite's power structure. All right, let's hear some more of Brother Steve Coakley.
These men use the societies to advance the wishes of the ruling class, and they set up a system, a circle within a circle, within another circle. Each circle protected the circle within it. So when you look to that boule logo, you see there's an urn. There's an animal with the wing of the bird, the tail of a lion, and it's got an urn, and it's got its paw over the urn. And it says in the history book number 2 by Hobart Jarrett that in the urn are the names of the people who are chosen to lead the state, which suggests that part of the society function is not to make known who the people of power and authority are.
Very important. Not part of the responsibility of the boule is to not to make known. In other words, to hide the names and the identities of those who are really in power, the ruling elite. Okay? Now, if we look here, the ruling elite, we could, symbolically speaking, we can perceive it to be the master. Okay? The boule, therefore, are the slaves or servants to the ruling elite, but are granted a relatively limited degree of power and influence. The question becomes, what power and influence has been granted the boule, and why?
Let me ask you a question. I went to Howard University, for instance, and a number of African so-called Greek societies, fraternities, as well as in our community, there's a number of secret, semi-secret organizations. How is the Boule different than the numerous fraternities and groups in our community? What is the relationship to the ruling class?
Father, son. The nine make up the axis of the Black Greek dynasty. There are 4 male societies, 4 female societies, and the Boule make the 9th one. Those 4 male, those 4 female, and the Boule tend to make up a aristocracy. We talked in the park about the 10%. Not in the sense of us in exclusivity, but them in the terms of deputizing 10% of the population to assure that the 90% never catch on.
So the Boule, which is made up of 4 fraternities, 4 sororities, and 1 that rules them all, meaning Sigma Pi Phi, they function as the deputy of 90% of the black population. Okay, so you have the 10% who are part of these secret societies, not just the Boule, but many different secret societies. Remember we said earlier how they all cross-hatch? You have 10% of the black population who participate, who are members of these secret societies, and they are used by the ruling elite. They serve the ruling elite to deputize 90% of the black population. And one of the major ways in which they do that is through media, in fact. But I want you guys to really think about something. 10%? 10%. Haven't we heard that figure before? Well, if we look into W.E.B. Du Bois, remember that he was the one who presented this concept of the talented 10th, the 10% of the black population that are to lead the rest of the 90%. Well, W.E.B. Du Bois was Boule. Are you beginning to see? W.E.B. Du Bois was Boule. So the idea is, did the Boule give him this concept to present to us? Or did he come up with it on his own? Whatever the issue may be, understand that he was Boule in the first place. So this concept of 10% of the black population, we're dealing with exclusivity, we're dealing with elitism. And the Boule functions on the notion that those who are members of the Boule are a ruling elite of the 90% of the black population. Now the question becomes, within the secret society network, this is important for people to understand. Within the secret society network, the Boule are to rule, to control, and to dominate what group of people? Let's take a listen.
In essence, what you're saying is that the Boule represents the buffer class, the petit bourgeois, the comprador buffer class that manages Africa's workers, peasants, students, and middle class in many ways, and are paid well for that. And they receive their direct orders from a European capitalist class.
So the Boule, who are mere slaves to the ruling elite, are granted the power to manage, to control, and to manipulate black people. But how is such management, control, and manipulation actualized? That's the question.
Now, what I'm trying to say is there's a vulnerability in America that has not been exercised by our community because our secret societies have been pledged never to tell us those vulnerabilities. They work for them, they patch them, they protect them, they act like they don't exist, but they serve them. And they never utter against them, even never whisper to us. There is a web. There is a web. There's sports. They're the media. They're education. They're social service. They're astronauts. They're the church. They are all of that. They are the secret societies too. And they all work in a loose-knit fashion, and they keep disagreements within a manageable limit.
Brother Steve Coakley, he states there is a web, they're sports, they're the media, they're education, they're social service, they're astronauts, they're the church, they are all of that. They are the secret societies too. And they all work in a loose-knit fashion, and they keep disagreements within a manageable limit. Now, the first thing he says is they're sports. They're sports? Well, how do we know this to be the case? Well, let's take a look. Arthur Ashe, tennis player, Boule. Elvin Hayes, basketball player, Boule. Lynn Swan, football player, Boule. Hank Aaron, baseball player, Boule. There's a long list too, by the way. I'm just showing some, in various sports, some names and figures that people would recognize. So Brother Steve Coakley, he also states here, there is a web, there is a web, there are sports, there are the media, there are education. Well, how do we know that to be the case? Education? How do we know this to be true? Well, W.E.B. Du Bois, Boulay, an academic, an author, and a journalist. Boulay. Carter G. Woodson, a historian, an author, and a journalist. Boulay. I remember we read his books in college. That's education. Dr. Asa Hilliard, an educator, psychologist, and professor. Boulay. That's education. Dr. Jacob Carruthers, educator, scholar, academic. Boulay. Robert Moulton, author, educator. Boulay. Brother Steve Coakley also states here, there is a web, there is a web, there's sports, there's the media, there's education, there's social service, there's astronauts, there's the church. The church? Yes. How do we know this to be the case? Well, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was Boulay. Benjamin Mays, a minister, educator, president of Morehouse College. Boulay. Reverend Al Sharpton, Baptist minister, civil rights activist, politician. Boulay. Jesse Jackson, politician, Baptist minister, civil rights activist. Boulay. You remember this flag? It's the UN flag. You see the wreath of peace there? What I'm getting at is the Boulay, in terms of its influence, how they dominate the 90% of the black population, also deals with politics. Jesse Jackson is an example of that. But it goes even deeper than that. Ralph Bunche participated, one of the founders, in terms of the formation and administration of the United Nations. He was Boulay. He also won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1950. So when we look at the UN, understand that there were Boulay participants in the formation and administration of the UN. We're talking about politics, and we're talking about a globalist agenda here. Maynard Jackson, politician, first black mayor of Atlanta, Georgia. Boulay. Whitney Young, the Urban League president. He was also funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Boulay. Tom Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles, California. Boulay. David Dinkins, politician, mayor of New York City. Boulay. Lawrence Douglas Wilder, politician, mayor of Richmond, Virginia. First African American to be elected as governor of a U.S. state. Boulay. Vernon Jordan, lawyer, business executive, advisor to Bill Clinton. Advisor? Yes, advisor to the king. You guys begin to see? Boulay. Dennis Archer, politician, lawyer, served on the Michigan Supreme Court, mayor of Detroit, president of the American Bar Association. Boulay. So, Brother Steve Coakley, as he states, there is a web, there's sports, there's the media, there's education, there's social service, there's astronauts, there's the church. They are all of that. They are the secret societies too. And they all work in a loose-knit fashion, and they keep disagreements within a manageable limit. He says they are the secret societies too. What secret society is Brother Steve Coakley speaking of? He's speaking of Sigma Pi Phi, the Black Boulay.